My name is Allison Parsons. I'm 32 years old, and for a long time I genuinely believed I was building a quiet, stable future with the man I loved. Stability was always my thing. I work in IT. I manage my life with checklists and calendars, and I've never been one for dramatic, chaotic love stories. I used to think that made me dependable. Later, I learned that some people will twist dependable into boring just to justify their own mess. Alan and I met 3 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. He was charming in that slightly scattered artistic way that made people feel protective of him. I was the steady one, organized rationale, the type of person who shows up 10 minutes early with everything already planned. We balanced each other, or so I thought. When we met, he had just gotten out of a rough breakup with his ex-girlfriend Jenna, who was the embodiment of emotional turbulence. She was a gallery assistant who floated between jobs, lived off favors, and left behind more broken promises than finished projects. Alan used to talk about how she'd ghost him for days, then reappear crying on his doorstep needing emotional rescue. I listened, comforted him through the leftover wounds, and helped him rebuild a life that wasn't centered around her instability. I never complained. I was all in. Then life threw Alan a curveball. About a year into our relationship, he lost his job due to restructuring at his small design studio. I was earning more consistently, so I covered rent for a few months. I cooked meals, updated his resume, helped him apply for new roles, and encouraged him through multiple failed interviews. He'd curl up next to me on the couch some nights, kiss my shoulder, and whisper, "You're my rock, Allison." I believed him. I even turned down a promotion that would have required frequent travel because he admitted he didn't want to feel left behind. At the time, that request felt loving. Looking back, I see how the balance was already shifting. The cracks appeared slowly. First, his phone started lighting up at odd hours. He would smile at the screen softly, quietly, then flip the phone face down. I'd ask who it was, and he'd mutter, "Just work stuff, though." His unemployed status made the excuse clumsy. I ignored my instinct to pry, telling myself trust meant giving space. Then came the comparisons. At dinners with friends, he'd bring up how spontaneous Jenna used to be, how she lived in the moment. He'd look at me and laugh like it was harmless commentary. I'd smile back, but inside I felt a tiny knot forming. One night, he posted a throwback photo on social media, him and Jenna at some art festival years ago. The caption read, "Good memories with good people." Comments immediately poured in, people tagging her, asking if they still talked. He defended it as nostalgia, nothing more. I swallowed the sharp ache in my chest and told myself it was just a photo. But the small things started piling up. He'd cancel our plans at the last minute because a friend needed help. He started wearing new shirts I'd never seen before, saying he borrowed them from his sister. Mutual friends began acting strangely around me, half sympathy, half discomfort, like they knew something I didn't. Then a friend pulled me aside at a backyard barbecue. He spoke reluctantly, like the truth was heavy. "Allison, I saw Alan out with someone last week. I think it was Jenna. Are you two okay?" My stomach dropped, but I stayed calm. I always stayed calm. That night I asked Alan gently if everything was all right. Not accusing, just asking. He rolled his eyes, sighed dramatically. "It's Jenna. She's going through a rough patch. Lost her place again. I'm just helping her out. You know how she struggles. Don't make this into something it's not." Helping her, again. The next weeks were a blur of tension. I tried to express how uncomfortable this made me, how it felt like emotional boundaries were being crossed. But he had a way of flipping the script. "Allison, you're being insecure. She's a friend in need. I can't abandon someone who depended on me for years." A friend. The word felt like a knife dulled by overuse. The breaking point came one Thursday evening. I came home early, arms full of groceries, because I planned to cook his favorite pasta dish. I wanted us to talk, really talk. But Alan was sitting on the couch with his legs pulled up, phone in hand, typing quickly, like he was in some emotional emergency. When he saw me, he jumped a little, instantly guilty. "Allison," he said, setting the phone down as if trying to hide it. "We need to talk." Every nerve in my body tensed. "Okay," I said, careful to keep my tone neutral. He took a deep breath, almost like he was rehearsing lines from a script. "Jenna called me today. She's in a really bad place. Her roommate kicked her out again and she has nowhere to go. She needs me right now, and I'm going to be there for her." I stared at him, stunned. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration. Like he was informing me he'd bought new curtains. "What do you mean, be there for her?" I asked as evenly as I could, though I felt my pulse thudding in my throat. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and gave me a look that suggested I was dense. I mean, she's going to be staying with me, or I'll crash with her while we sort things out. It's temporary. We have history, Allison. You know how much she struggles, and you're strong. You get it. History. That word, the way he said it, was a slap. You're talking about your ex, I said quietly, the woman who drained you emotionally for years. And now you're prioritizing her over us. He scoffed. It's not about prioritizing. It's called compassion. You wouldn't understand because you're so stable. Jenna needs support. Our relationship is strong enough to handle this. If you can't support me helping a friend, maybe you're the one with issues. I felt something inside me shift, a cold clarity. A friend, I replied softly. You've been texting her behind my back, posting about her, canceling on me to see her. This is not friendship. This is an emotional affair. His eyes narrowed and his voice dripped with condescension. Emotional affair. Don't be dramatic. Jenna gets a side of me you don't. She understands the creative part of me. You're great at the boring stuff. Bills, plans, routine. But sometimes I need more. He said it like I was supposed to apologize. I stood there for a long moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. So what now, I asked. Are you choosing her? He shrugged, smirked. I'm not choosing anyone. But yeah, I'll be spending time with her. If that means we need space or take a break, fine. You always bounce back. That was it, the final push. I inhaled deeply, nodded once, and said the line that ended everything. Go be there for her then. His smirk faltered. What? You heard me. I grabbed my jacket calmly, not rushing, not trembling. I'm not fighting for someone who already left. I walked to the door. He called after me, shocked. Allison, seriously. You're leaving over this. I paused at the doorway. You left first. Then I walked out into the cool evening, closing the door softly behind me. I didn't cry that night. People always picture breakups as dramatic storms, shattered glasses, slammed doors, shouting that echoes through hallways. But mine was a quiet unraveling, like someone slowly pulling a single thread from a sweater until it came apart in their hands. I spent the first night at my friend Rebecca's apartment. She lived only a few blocks away in a small sunlit loft with mismatched throw pillows and a perpetually humming air purifier. She didn't ask for details when I arrived. She simply opened the door, saw my face, and pulled me into a long, grounding hug. Then she handed me a blanket and let silence fill the room instead of questions. That was what I needed most space to breathe without justifying myself. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. My mind replayed the previous night's conversation with Alan like a glitching video clip. His expressions, his tone. The certainty in his voice when he talked about Jenna needing him. The smugness when he called me boring. The dismissiveness when he said our relationship was strong enough to handle this as if I was an obstacle to his charity project. It made me sick to realize this wasn't a sudden shift. It was a slow fade I ignored for too long. I left Rebecca's before she woke up, wanting to avoid the inevitable pitying questions. Instead, I walked across the city in a kind of numb daze, letting the morning cold settle into my lungs. I didn't have a plan yet, but instinct told me one thing very clearly. I needed space from everything that reminded me of Alan. By noon, I was sitting with my laptop at a cafe near the park, scrolling through listings. There was a furnished studio available for immediate move-in, a little overpriced but cozy, with a corner window overlooking the walking trail. I messaged the landlord, viewed the place that evening, and signed the temporary lease. The whole process was mechanical but efficient. Stability is what I do best after all, even when my life is falling apart. When Alan realized I hadn't come home, the messages began. Can we talk? Where are you? This is childish. Come home. I didn't answer. I went back to the apartment only when I knew he was at work. I packed my essentials, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, my extra chargers, and took the things I'd bought with my own money. I left the furniture, plates, pots, blankets, all of it. I didn't want objects that would remind me of us. The air felt stale there, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. On his nightstand, his phone buzzed repeatedly. Jenna's name flashed across the screen in bright white letters. For a moment, I just stared at it, not with longing, not with heartbreak, just clarity. He didn't choose me. He didn't even hesitate. He simply assumed I'd wait. The next few days were quiet, eerily quiet. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb, checking it only when needed. The silence gave me room to notice my life again, the way sunlight hit my new apartment floors in the morning. How much I had missed the feeling of walking into a space designed only for me, how soothing it was to sit by the park window at night and watch the city lights blink awake. Alan sent longer and longer messages as the days passed, shifting from irritation to guilt-tripping to faux concern. We need to discuss this like adults. You're blowing things out of proportion. Jenna really needed help. You know how she is. Stop punishing me. But I held the line. I didn't respond. 3 days in, Rebecca invited me to brunch. I hesitated, but she gave me that look she always gave when she knew I'd been spiraling silently. I went. Sitting on the cafe patio with her sipping iced coffee, listening to the hum of passing cars, it felt like letting air back into deflated lungs. She waited until the plates arrived before asking gently, "Do you want to talk about it now?" I nodded. He's with Jenna, or helping her, or something. It doesn't really matter. He chose her chaos over us. Rebecca's jaw clenched. I never liked her. She always had this vortex energy, like she'd pull everyone around her into whatever mess she created. My lips twitched into a humorless smile. Alan said she understands his creative side. Apparently, I'm just the stable, predictable one who pays bills. Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. So, responsible and emotionally functional. What a horrifying curse. I laughed. Really laughed. It felt strange and relieving at the same time. But later, as we walked through the city, I kept thinking about that word he used, boring. It lingered like a bruise I couldn't see but felt whenever I moved. That night, I journaled for the first time in months. I didn't write anything profound, just thoughts, little observations, feelings I'd ignored for too long. Somewhere along the way, I realized I had been dimming myself down, steadying myself harder, trying to compensate for Alan's volatility. I had become the anchor for someone who didn't want to stop drifting. A week later, karma came knocking. I was at the grocery store grabbing ingredients for the first decent meal I'd cooked for myself since moving out when I ran into Tom, one of Alan's friends. He approached me with that combination of awkwardness and urgency people get when they know something you don't. "Allison, I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but look, Alan has been posting weird stuff online. Subtle digs about people who don't understand him, artsy quotes about being misunderstood. And Jenna, she's basically moved in with him." I felt the sting I expected, but underneath it was something else. Not rage, not grief. "Pity," Tom continued. "He's stressed out. Jenna keeps ordering food deliveries he pays for. She's picking fights. She's sleeping all day and then staying up all night. They got into an argument outside the gallery 2 days ago. I didn't say anything, and Tom seemed almost relieved that I didn't ask for more details. He cleared his throat. "Anyway, I thought you should know. I'm sorry things turned out like this." "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. When I got home, I cooked myself pasta in silence. The steam rising from the pot felt almost therapeutic. As I ate, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't imagining karma as payback. It was simply the reality he had chosen. And I was finally choosing myself. 2 weeks after I left, his tone changed completely. The text became gentler, hesitant, loaded with implications. "Allison, maybe we both overreacted. I miss our routine. I haven't slept. Jenna's been having a hard time. Please talk to me." I read them, let the words wash over me without sinking in, then archived the messages. I didn't write back. That silence wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. But the world around Alan was beginning to crumble, and soon other people started reaching out on his behalf. People who would make everything much more complicated. Alan's unraveling didn't happen all at once. It was subtle at first, the kind of quiet disintegration you only notice when you're not the one holding everything together anymore. I had stepped out of his chaos, and without me, to absorb the shockwaves, they bounced back toward him with increasing force. The first sign was the shift in his messages. What began as irritation and guilt-tripping slowly turned into pleading. "Allison, can we please just talk? One conversation. I know things got messy, but we're better than this. I'm sorry if I said anything hurtful. I was stressed." I read them, let my eyes skim across the screen, and then locked my phone. I didn't delete anything. I wanted to see the pattern clearly, the manipulation, the blame shifting, the sudden tenderness that appeared only after consequences set in. 3 days later, the tone shifted again. "Jenna's trying, but she's going through stuff. Please don't make this harder. You know how she is when she's overwhelmed." No apology, just excuses wrapped in emotional obligation. It was strange. There was a time when I would have analyzed every word, wondering what I did wrong, wondering how I could fix it. But now I read his messages with a kind of detached curiosity, as if studying a character in a story I was no longer part of. The real downward spiral began when mutual friends started reaching out, not out of concern for me, but because Alan's life had turned into a spectacle. Lisa messaged first. Lisa, hey, how are you holding up? Just a heads up, Jenna's posting emotional stuff about Alan on her story. They look rough. Then Tom again. Tom, I shouldn't say this, but Jenna wrecked his car, borrowed it, and hit a mailbox. Minor damage, but no insurance. He's paying out of pocket. Rebecca read Tom's message over my shoulder and muttered, that's what happens when you treat chaos like a personality trait. I tried not to enjoy the poetic irony. It wasn't about revenge, it was about alignment. He had chosen this. I had simply stepped away. A week later, the attempts to contact me escalated. Alan's texts doubled, then tripled, but I kept my phone on silent. Some messages were almost comically contradictory. One morning, I miss us. I realize now how good we were. That evening, if you cared at all, you'd respond. This silence is cruel. 5 hours later, okay, I get it. I messed up. But Jenna's not doing well. She's overwhelmed. Don't make me deal with this alone. The mental acrobatics were exhausting, even from afar. I didn't answer. Then came the calls. Not from him, but from people around him, people who had always enabled his worst tendencies. The first was his sister Melissa. I recognized her number before I picked up, but curiosity got the better of me. Allison, she said. The moment I answered, her tone sharp and disapproving. I've been hearing things, and honestly, I'm shocked at how you're handling this. I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see it. Handling what? She huffed dramatically. Alan is hurting. He made a mistake trying to help Jenna, but you walking out like that, that's immature. You need to be the bigger person here. I blinked slowly, trying to decide if she was kidding. Melissa, I said calmly. Alan didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. She scoffed. Stop being dramatic. Jenna manipulated him. You know she's unstable. He thought he was doing the right thing. And that's his responsibility, I replied, not mine. Her tone sharpened. You're abandoning him. After everything he gave you? Everything he gave me. I had to bite back a laugh. I think we're done here, I said, and hung up before she could say anything else. Melissa called twice more that afternoon. I didn't answer. 2 days later, the situation escalated further. I came home in the early evening after a long day at work. I just wanted tea, a warm shower, and a quiet night. But as I approached my apartment building, I saw someone standing against the stairwell railing. Tall, arms crossed, impatient stance. Sam, Alan's best friend. My stomach tightened. I knew this wasn't going to be pleasant. He straightened when he saw me. There you are. I didn't bother hiding my irritation. Sam, what are you doing here? He exhaled, exasperated, like he'd been waiting for hours. Alan sent me. He's really messed up right now, and you ignoring him is making it worse. I unlocked the building door without answering. He followed me in. Seriously, Allison. You think walking away solves anything? You two were solid. Jenna was a blip. I paused at my apartment door, a blip who lives with him now. He rolled his eyes. She needed a place to stay. Alan was just being kind. I met his gaze steadily. Kindness doesn't require emotional intimacy, or secrecy, or disrespect. Sam scoffed. God, you sound like a therapist. Alan said you always overanalyzed everything. The jab slid right off me. Tell Alan there's nothing left to discuss. Sam stepped closer, lowering his voice to what he probably thought was a sympathetic tone. Come on, Allison. He's miserable. Jenna's draining him. He's not sleeping. He's losing money. You owe him at least one conversation. I tilted my head. Why? He blinked. What do you mean, why you loved him? He loved you. Then he shouldn't have chosen someone else over me. Sam hesitated for the first time. I used that moment to gently close my door in his face. Good night, Sam. He muttered something I didn't catch, then stomped away. I let out a long breath and leaned against the door, exhausted but steady. Every encounter only reinforced what I already knew. I had made the right choice. I thought that would be the end of it. But then he showed up. 2 days later, I returned from a late meeting to find Alan sitting on the steps outside my building. Knees pulled up, head down. Fingers knotted in his hair. He looked smaller somehow, as if wearing a version of himself he had outgrown. When he heard my footsteps, he stood quickly. Allison. His voice cracked on my name. I stopped 2 steps above him, keeping distance. What are you doing here? He swallowed hard. I needed to talk to you. In person. I didn't know what else to do. I stared at him. His eyes were bloodshot. His clothes rumpled. He looked like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. He took a step towards me. Jenna. She's not doing well. She's been having these outbursts, and she's spending money like crazy. She's angry all the time. She's saying I owe her things. I don't know how to handle it. I felt no compassion, Just an old echo of it. He continued, desperation tightening every word. You were right. About her. About everything. I should have listened. I should have chosen you. Chosen me. The irony was sharp enough to slice through stone. I kept my tone calm. You didn't accidentally choose her, Alan. You dismissed me to do it. He stepped closer, tears brimming. Please, I need you. I miss us. I miss the way you grounded me. I miss your stability. There it was. The same stability he'd mocked. The same stability he'd discarded. The same stability he wanted now that the world he chose was burning. I inhaled once deeply. Stability. I said quietly that you called boring. His expression crumpled. Allison, don't do this. Please, I'm falling apart. I met his eyes steadily unmoved. Then fall, I said, but not on me. I walked past him up the stairs and into my building. He didn't follow. He didn't call my name. He simply sank back down onto the steps as I closed the door behind me, sealing the end of whatever illusion we once had. Healing isn't a straight line. People say that a lot, usually in soft voices meant to comfort you. They don't tell you that healing often feels more like a series of quiet recalibrations. Small choices, micro moments where you decide who you're going to be without the weight of someone else's chaos. The weeks after Alan showed up at my apartment were surprisingly peaceful. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because the absence of emotional turbulence felt like stepping out of a room with a blaring alarm that you didn't realize had been ringing for years. I fell into a rhythm. Work occasional brunches with Rebecca, long walks around the park evenings spent cooking meals I actually enjoyed. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just steady living. And for the first time in a long time, steady didn't feel like a limitation. It felt like freedom. I unfollowed Alan on social media. I blocked Jenna. I muted a few mutual friends who posted too many updates. I didn't want to get pulled back into the narrative I had just escaped. I wanted my own story again, my own pace, my own voice. Then something surprising happened. I started enjoying my own company. On weekends, I'd explore small cafes and used bookstores across the city. I joined a hiking group not to meet people, but because I missed the feeling of being outdoors without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I rediscovered things about myself, preferences, passions, quirks, that I had let blur into the background while managing someone else's emergencies. One crisp Saturday morning, during a hike along a wooded trail, I met Nathan again, the soft-spoken graphic designer from the group. We'd exchanged a few polite conversations before, but this time we ended up walking the same pace, naturally falling into step beside one another. He pointed toward a cluster of trees. You see that bird, blue grosbeak? I squinted. That tiny blue thing. He laughed lightly. That's the one. They migrate through this area this time of year. I smiled. I envy anyone who can identify birds without a 5-minute Google search. Well, he said, eyes twinkling, Google never seems to appreciate my efforts. There was an ease to him, gentle humor, without bravado, attention, without intensity. Nothing performative, nothing needy. He was simply present. It felt refreshing, like standing under warm sunlight after months of overcast skies. We talked the entire hike. Books we loved, places we wanted to travel, music we played when we couldn't sleep. No probing, no rushing. Just two people discovering the pieces of themselves they didn't have to hide. When we reached the end of the trail, he hesitated. I really enjoyed talking with you. Me too, I admitted. He grinned softly. If you want, maybe we could grab coffee sometime, only if you feel up for it. I agreed, not because I was ready for anything serious, but because for the first time in months, something inside me felt open rather than guarded. Coffee turned into a long walk afterward. Another outing became a picnic in the park. Nothing rushed, nothing heavy. He didn't interrogate my past. He didn't push. He simply showed up in a way I wasn't used to consistently, but without expectation. Slowly, I realized something important. I wasn't boring. I wasn't predictable. I wasn't an emotional placeholder. I was stable, grounded, reliable. Qualities that weren't insults, they were foundations. And in the right relationship, foundations weren't burdens. They were blessings. While I rose quietly, Alan fell loudly. Every few days, someone would mention something unintentionally dramatic, always beginning with a sigh or an eye roll. Lisa texted once, girl, Jenna is exhausting him. He looks like he hasn't slept in a month. Then Tom cornered me outside a grocery store again. I swear, Alan is unraveling. Jenna's been yelling at him in public. She drained his savings. She's telling everyone he owes her stability, whatever that means. He missed a freelance deadline. His landlord's threatening him over late rent. I nodded, not out of sympathy, but because hearing it confirmed something the universe was giving him exactly what he had chosen. Chaos doesn't transform into calm just because someone offers it a place to sleep. Still, I didn't gloat. His downfall wasn't satisfying. It was sad. Sad in the way watching someone repeat the same mistakes is sad. Sad in the way seeing potential wasted is sad. It wasn't my burden anymore. The real shift came when my boss called me into her office one morning. "Allison, I've been reviewing your work over the last few months," she began, a smile tugging at her lips. "You're consistent, sharp, reliable. We're opening a new hybrid role, pay more flexibility. I want you to have it." I blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Absolutely. You've grown, and I trust you." The words hit a place inside me that had been bruised too long. Reliable, trustworthy, steady. Qualities Alan mocked were the same ones earning me the future I had deserved all along. I accepted the position that afternoon. Nathan and I grew closer naturally without pressure. A few slow dates turned into steadier companionship. He wasn't a distraction from the past. He was a reminder of what it felt like to be valued without conditions. He laughed with me, not at me. He appreciated my steadiness. He admired my organization. He found my routines charming. "It means you care," he'd say, "about your life, about order, about people who matter to you." Alan never said anything like that. He never even considered it. Nathan made space for me without expecting me to hold his world together. He wasn't perfect. He didn't pretend to be. But he was present, available, emotionally balanced. A partner, not a project. One night, while we sat on a blanket in the park watching city lights flicker on the river, he turned to me and asked gently, "Do you feel ready for something real with me?" I paused, not out of fear but reflection. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. He kissed me with soft, steady confidence. It felt like closure, not because he replaced Alan, but because he showed me what a healthy connection could look like. Meanwhile, Alan's story continued to crumble through the grapevine. Melissa tried once more calling from a new number. I declined the call. Then she texted, "You need to talk to him. Jenna cheated on him. He's a wreck. Stop being cold." I didn't reply. Lisa wrote, "She destroyed his credit. Girl, he should have listened to you." Tom, he moved back with his parents. Jenna ran off with another guy. It's messy. Each update was less surprising than the last. Alan hadn't just fallen. He'd fallen exactly where he was headed. 1 month after our coffee stroll, Nathan and I officially began dating. We weren't rushing. We weren't avoiding the past. We were simply choosing each other in a way that felt healthy, mutual, and grounded. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I wasn't carrying a relationship alone. This part of my life, the quiet rise, the rediscovery of joy, the return of peace, felt like the truest revenge. Not because someone else suffered, but because I finally understood my worth. I was no one's backup plan, no one's emotional caretaker, no one's anchor to be taken for granted. I was whole, and I was rising. But the universe wasn't finished with the story yet. A final confrontation was waiting for me, one that would seal everything that came before. And it happened at a party where everyone who knew both of us would be watching. The night of Lisa's birthday party felt unusually warm for early fall. The city lights glowed against the evening sky, and the bar she chose, an intimate downtown place with dim lighting and exposed brick, buzzed with soft chatter and low music. I arrived a little late with Nathan by my side, not out of strategy, but because we had lingered over dinner and time had slipped away naturally. As soon as we stepped inside, heads turned toward us. It wasn't dramatic or showy, just a quiet shift of attention, the way people look when they recognize the entrance of someone who has been the center of recent conversations. I sensed whispers, spotted a few subtle glances toward the door behind me, as if expecting someone else to follow. But I already knew. Alan would be here. This mutual circle wasn't wide enough for us to avoid crossing paths forever. Nathan squeezed my hand, gently reading the tension in my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it, truly meant it. "I'm good." We approached the long table where everyone was gathered. Lisa's eyes lit up when she saw me. "Allison, you look incredible. And is this?" "This is Nathan," I confirmed, watching her eyebrows lift in delighted approval. "He's the one I mentioned." Nathan shook her hand and started chatting easily with the group. His presence beside me was steady, warm, and calming without trying to be protective. He didn't hover. He didn't tense. He didn't treat this night like a battlefield. He simply existed beside me, confident and grounded in himself. It struck me how different that felt. We took seats at the far end of the table, Conversations flowed naturally. People asked about my new job, upcoming travel plans, and hiking stories. Nathan shared a few funny anecdotes about our recent picnic, and the group laughed along. For a while, I almost forgot about Alan entirely. Almost. Because about 30 minutes into the evening, I felt a shift ripple through the table, a brief hush, a flicker of discomfort, someone avoiding eye contact. I turned just as the front door opened. Alan walked in. Even from across the room, I could see he wasn't the same man I'd left behind months ago. He looked worn down, dark circles under his eyes, hair messy, like he hadn't bothered to style it, clothes wrinkled as though he'd grabbed them from the floor. He scanned the room quickly, searching. Then he saw me. His entire posture tightened. Hope flashed across his face, dangerous, desperate hope. He murmured something to the friend beside him and began weaving through the crowd toward our table. Nathan noticed the change in my expression before he even spotted Alan. "Is that him?" he murmured. "Yes." Nathan gave a small nod, not possessive or reactive, just supportive. "I'm here, whatever you need." Alan reached the table and stopped in front of us, chest rising and falling like he'd sprinted the last stretch. Conversations around us faded into awkward silence. "Allison," he breathed, voice cracking slightly. "Please, can we talk just for a minute? Alone." I stared at him, calm, steady. For the first time, I noticed I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't even hurt. I was simply done. Nathan didn't interrupt. He didn't bristle or posture. He simply rested a hand lightly on my back, giving me space to decide. I responded, "Whatever you need to say, you can say here." Alan's eyes flicked to Nathan. "Who is he?" "My boyfriend." The words seemed to hit him like a blow. His face twisted into something raw, vulnerable, and furious all at once. "Already." "You replaced me that fast." I felt a wave of murmurs ripple through the table. Everyone watched silent, unsure whether to intervene. I lifted my chin. "No, Alan." I moved on. "There's a difference." His voice rose, cracking under pressure. "You moved on with him." You don't even know him like you knew me." "We had years, Allison. We had history." "That history," I said softly, "is exactly why I'm not with you." He blinked rapidly, tears threatening. "Jenna, she ruined me. She lied. She took everything. You were right about her. I should have listened. I should have chosen you." The room fell completely silent. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, but for the first time I didn't feel exposed. I felt grounded. Nathan stayed still, offering quiet strength instead of stepping in. Alan continued, more desperate now. "I need you, Allison. I'm lost. I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't do this without you. You held everything together. You understood me. You cared." I inhaled slowly, exhaled, then met his eyes with a calm clarity that surprised even me. "No," I said gently but firmly. "I cared for you. I supported you. I anchored you. But you never chose me back. Not once. Not when it mattered." His face fell trembling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance. I'll change. I'll be better." I shook my head. "Alan, you're not asking for a relationship. You're asking for stability, for someone to absorb the consequences of your choices." He opened his mouth to protest, but I kept going. "I spent years being your emotional shelter. You want me back because you lost your storm, not because you found clarity." He swallowed hard, tears falling freely now. I continued, voice steady words like quiet truth, cutting through the tension. "You became irrelevant to the life I built." A few people around the table gasped softly. Alan recoiled like I'd struck him. "Not because you're worthless," I added softly, "but because I finally chose myself. I'm with someone who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Someone who values the things you dismissed." My eyes met his. Stability, reliability, peace. Alan whispered, "I miss you." "I hope one day," I said gently, "you miss the version of yourself that valued those things too." He stood frozen for a moment, trembling. Then anger flickered through his grief. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "You think he's better. He doesn't know you." I didn't flinch. He doesn't need me to fix him. That's the difference. Nathan finally spoke, calm and even. "Alan, I think it's time you head home." Something inside Alan cracked. He backed away, slowly wiped his face with his sleeve, and turned toward the door. For a brief second, he looked like a man seeing the consequences of his choices clearly for the first time. Then he left. The room exhaled all at once. Someone whispered, "Holy hell." Lisa placed a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "I'm more than okay." Nathan smiled at me, warm and proud. "You handled that with incredible grace." I leaned against him gently. "I finally feel free." A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Alan had moved back in with his parents to get back on his feet. Jenna was gone, vanished into someone else's life as she always did. His circle had grown quiet around him, his world smaller. Meanwhile, mine kept growing. Nathan and I planned a trip together, a simple getaway. Nothing extravagant. My job continued to bloom with new opportunities. I felt light-centered and present in my own life for the first time in years. Pain had shaped me. Betrayal had sharpened me. But healing had strengthened me. And in the end, I didn't need karma to teach Alan a lesson. He taught it to himself.